So we're going to go to some election integrity. Let's start. So we're going to go to two places. We're going to go to Iowa and California. I guess we'll do Iowa first, since their caucus is coming up very soon. So let's see what they're doing in Iowa. This is actually from NPR, Nice Polite Republicans. And this is back a little ways, but this was shared in our Reddit subsection by Project Rage. And Project Rage, thank you for sharing this with me, because I think there's a lot going on in this 4-minute soundbite, and we're going to listen to it. So check this out and make sure the volume's good. Check this out.
The upcoming Iowa caucuses represent the first in a year of big tests for America's democracy after Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. In fact, NPR and Iowa Public Radio have learned that Iowa state Democrats are going to...
So I want to listen to the whole thing, but I just want to mention real quick, in case you missed it, which I'm sure you didn't notice, they immediately genuflected to the altar of Russiagate. That's important to all this. All right.
Use a new smartphone app to help run their caucuses. We're going to talk more about that now with two reporters. First, Miles Parks. He covers election security for NPR. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
And Iowa Public Radio's Kate Payne. She's in Des Moines. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks.
I want to start with you. First, just remind us how caucuses work and how an app would be involved this time around.
Yeah, so caucuses are very different from a primary. There are no ballots. There are no voting booths. Iowans will physically go to different community centers all across the state and physically show their support for a candidate by standing in a different part of the room. And so as far as this app, the party is hoping that it will help precinct leaders be able to report their results more quickly. Those leaders will be calculating how many delegates each candidate wins based on the support in the room. And so having an app, the intention is that process will happen faster and local leaders will have help in calculating those numbers.
Miles, we've talked a lot about cybersecurity since the 2016 election.
This part's really important.
Given that cyber attacks were part of Russia's interference. How big a deal is this, that Iowa Democrats are going to try and use this approach in 2020?
It's one thing to introduce a new piece of election technology without really any practice beforehand, and then it's another thing to introduce that piece of election technology without giving any security details about it. We know very little about the specifics of this app. We don't know who developed it or who wrote the code. We don't know what sorts of security tests have been performed on it. These are the two basic questions that any security expert would ask when confronting a new system. And the Democratic Party says basically they're not going to provide any of this information because they're scared it would help hackers. But experts actually say that secrecy doesn't help against hacking at all. Here's Betsy Cooper. She's a cybersecurity policy expert at the Aspen Institute.
Basic transparency around how it was built, how up-to-date the security of the app is, and how it's been tested all could be made publicly available with little cost to the DNC.
Kate, how are these concerns being addressed? As you said, this app is focused mainly on reporting caucus results. Could the election results be, for instance, changed remotely?
So because of the way the caucuses work, there are thousands of witnesses who are seeing the results play out in these caucus locations. This year, the party is also using preference cards, so there will be a paper trail involved that could be referenced. So the idea of the results being tampered with, that could be overturned. There will also be contingency plans that the party has set up. Troy Price, the head of the state party in Iowa, says there will be a hotline for folks to call in if the app doesn't work for whatever reason.
If there is a challenge, we'll be ready with a backup and a backup to that backup and a backup to the backup to the backup. I mean, we are fully prepared to make sure that we can get these results in and get these results in accurately.
Finally, Miles, given what happened back in 2016, what are some of the other sorts of problems that people should be aware of?
There are a couple scenarios to look out for here. A successful attack could potentially lead to the wrong winner being announced and then having to be retracted, which would obviously lead to a lot of questions about the election's legitimacy. An attack that didn't even break into the system could still potentially bring it down, which would obviously lead to delays in reporting and a lot of confusion at all of these individual precincts. And then there's the possibility, you have to remember that this app is going to be downloaded on the phones of almost 2,000 party and caucus leaders across the state. These are personal devices that have emails, passwords, text messages, photos, and Russia has already shown an ability to weaponize information that they have hacked and stolen. They did this leading up to the 2016 election, hacking John Podesta's email account and weaponizing those emails.
John Podesta fell for a phishing scheme because he's a moron, but we'll continue listening.
Emails. We just do not have enough security specifics about this app to know how it will protect against that same sorts of hacking this time around.
That's NPR's Miles Parks. Thanks.
So a lot was going on here. First of all, if you were counting, they genuflected at the altar of Russia hysteria 5 times in that 4-minute segment. So basically once every 60 seconds or so, they genuflected at the altar of Russiagate. And when you are so concerned about a foreign attack, it's a lot easier to overlook the concerns domestically. And look at what they admitted in this 4-minute piece. We don't know who developed this app. We don't know who's behind the app. We don't know how secure it is or isn't. We don't know any of the mechanisms behind it. And the Democratic Party is sharing none of this. Why? Because they're saying if they do, it might get hacked. And if somebody tampers with the results from this phone app, as they acknowledged in this piece, well, what could that mean? That could mean the right winner's not announced. That could mean that can mean that the votes are tallied properly, votes are counted properly. You get the idea. You all know what could happen if something is tampered with or hacked. Meanwhile, the Democratic establishment is not being transparent at all about this app in Iowa. And what do we already know the Democratic establishment is doing? Well, if you took a look at the DNC Rules Committee or the DNC policy committees, they are stacked with big pharma executives. They are stacked with corrupt union officials. They are stacked with people from the Clinton administration, the Obama administration. They are basically anybody who would potentially be against Bernie Sanders and who would potentially be in bed with big pharma, in bed with oil and gas, in bed. I mean, that's who all of those members are, and they were all appointed by Tom Perez. And the DNC does not have the best track record when it comes to allowing an election to go through ethically. So in this report, they're all talking about the fear of Russian interference. And remember what happened in 2016. Well, I do remember what happened in 2016. John Podesta fell for a phishing scam. There was some information that WikiLeaks published about the DNC cheating. And a Russian spam agency published some memes for a mere $1,400, I believe. At least that was what was spent with Google. They published some memes that were in broken English. Some of them were seen by about 300 people. They didn't really have any common theme politically. They were all over the place. Some were pro-Trump, some were anti-Trump, some was about Jesus helping you to stop masturbating. That's what happened. Again, the Russia hysteria is the establishment left's version of voter fraud, meaning it's a very, very minor issue at most that is over-amplified to distract you from other things. And here you see, and in an NPR piece, 5 times they genuflect at the altar of Russia hysteria. Why is that relevant? Well, because look at all the other stuff they just admitted to. That's very noteworthy. The Democratic establishment is telling you nothing about this app that they're going to use in Iowa. They're sharing no information with you. There's no evidence of any accountability that is privy to the public. None whatsoever. And they don't have to. Why? Because it might get hacked by Russia if we tell you anything, even though even this piece itself had a security expert say that has nothing to, you should tell us what's going on here. Like, whether you tell us or not, that doesn't mean that we're any more or less likely to be hacked. Oh, and by the way, you want to talk about hacking in our voting machines? or in our voting process or our caucus process, let's take a look at the fact that our voting machines themselves were able to be hacked by 10-year-olds. So it's very interesting that when you spend all the time worrying about a foreign interferer, you kind of overlook the domestic ones. You overlook the fact that the DNC has purged voter rolls, that voters were purged from the rolls in Detroit and in New York City and in California. You overlook the fact that the DNC was actively trying to cheat Bernie Sanders in 2016. And it's safe to say, given all the committee members they have now, they've kind of abandoned that idea of being neutral. In fact, they're admitting regret that they weren't more neutral because they see Bernie Sanders winning. You overlook the fact that we still have superdelegates. We didn't get rid of them. They can just come on a later ballot. They can come on the second ballot and thwart the will of the people. If there's no clear majority, the superdelegates come in and they can just abandon the will of the people and give the nomination to whoever they want. You overlook all those things when all that is amplified is the supposed Russian boogeyman. And that's what we're dealing with here. That's what we're dealing with here. They just openly admit it. In this 4-minute NPR piece, they openly admit it. Hey, there's an app that's going to count the votes, that's going to tally the votes in an incredibly consequential election. I mean, this is not just another election. This is a big one. This is a big one because there is a chance to really alter the conversation we're having in this country, to really alter the priorities of this country. If Bernie Sanders is elected, is he going to get through every single thing he wants to get through? It's doubtful, but it's going to completely alter the conversation we're having in this country and the priorities in this country. We have a chance to go from war empire that will inevitably fail, as all of them do, to a country that actually looks out for its people, to a country that's a diplomatic player in the game of the world. We have a chance to do that, and yes, it can be done. Humanity has proven over its history that it is adaptable, that it does adapt, and sometimes change happens quick. Sometimes it's a sharp shift, and we've seen that in the history of our country in the contemporary sense. Look at FDR, and then on the bad side of the coin, look at Reagan. Look at how quick Reagan did what he did, and yeah, the rise of neoliberalism started with Carter, but Reagan just put it on steroids, baby, and that was a pretty quick change. Look at how our country changed after the invasion of Iraq, after 9/11. So yes, we can have a sharp turn, and we can have a sharp turn for the better. And here we are, as Iowa is approaching. There's going to be a phone app that the Democrats are in charge of, and you know nothing about the accountability of this app, and they don't have to tell you. Why? Because if they do, that might help Russia do something. I mean, it's almost comical how tone deaf. I mean, look at all they admitted to in that report. But as long as the Russia boogeyman is at bay, it's not newsworthy that the Democrats are sharing nothing in regards to the transparency of this app. The Democratic establishment, which has been actively cheating and continues to cheat since day one. If you don't genuflect at the altar of the DCCC at the DNC, they will screw you and they will keep you out. And there's audio footage of them actively trying to screw over progressive grassroots candidates. It continually happens. It happens every day. We've covered countless examples on this show. But let's let them have an app and share nothing with us. What could possibly go wrong there? So that's what's going on in Iowa. Now, fortunately, in California, it's a lot more transparent. He said as he got on the sarcasm slide, and got ready to take the ride down. So take a look at this. This isn't. Now, we all know that ballot placement is pretty significant. That's a thing. You can take a look at the case of Jim Keedy. If you don't think ballot placement is very important, Jim Keedy was a progressive who ran in New Jersey. I believe it was the 4th district, and they didn't want to see him do good, so they totally screwed him over on the placement on where he was on the ballot, and he lost. But check this out. So here's a sample California ballot. Let's take a look at this photo. Look at that. Now, I know this isn't going to be a make 'em or break 'em thing because, I mean, people are going to seek out Bernie Sanders' name. But look at how just in your face that is. First, Tom Steyer, Deval Patrick. Look at this. Bernie Sanders, they put right near Joe Sestak, near the bottom. Bernie Sanders is underneath John Delaney. John Delaney, you know the only piece of press John Delaney has gotten as of recent? A C-SPAN bus rode by. Not C-SPAN itself. He could have gotten a hot 13 people if it was C-SPAN itself. But it was the C-SPAN bus, which has barely any followers on Twitter. And I don't know why that exists. I don't know how C-SPAN can even afford a bus. But they have a C-SPAN bus that goes around, and they stop John Delaney. John Delaney. And John Delaney is listed above Bernie Sanders on a sample California mail-in ballot. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that absolutely amazing? It's like they're not even trying to conceal the contempt the establishment has for Bernie Sanders and how desperately they don't want him to win. And one of the things we covered on this show in the past, we covered the voting machines in California and how in Los Angeles they're going to try this brand new technology that hasn't been tested yet, that's been incredibly susceptible, and basically everything that could go wrong, it's gone wrong, and they have no idea how these machines are going to work out, none whatsoever, and they don't care. We covered that on this show. You can find that clip. But here's a little update on that. So check this out. State okays LA County's new voting machines with a whole lot of caveats. So again, these incredibly susceptible voting machines, they okayed those. They don't care. They're saying they're fine. But here's an update on what might also be going on. The state of California has given Los Angeles County's new voting equipment its seal of approval with some significant caveats. On Friday, Secretary of State Alex Padilla granted conditional certification. So here's the thing. The county must meet a stack of requirements before primary election voters get their hands on the machines starting February 22nd. Election officials have a duty to make the voting booth voting both as secure and as accessible as possible. As part of my certification of VSAP, this is according to Alex Padilla, I am insisting on some essential modifications to the system and requiring ongoing reports from Los Angeles County so that we can continue to improve the voting experience for Angelenos. Now, here's the thing. The headline. In a reversal of the county's plans, voters must be given the option to hand-mark paper ballots at new voting centers. All right. Now, here's the thing. It's not clear what the blank write-in paper ballots are going to be like. Padilla required in his certificate. We don't know what this looks like. It's up to the county. They must contain all elements consistent with federal voting assistance programs, federal write-in absentee ballot. Voters may have to handwrite candidates' names. Padilla's office said in the straight, but these ballots provide an opportunity for voters to hand-mark their ballot if that is their preference. You may need to write in their name. You may need to just make a mark. You may need to take a little stone and chisel out the candidate's name. You may need to, so it's not, the point being, it's not clear what these paper ballots are going to look like, how they're going to work, how they're going to be tallied, but we have to have the option available to you. Why is that option available to you? Well, the option's available to you because we have no idea how this machine's going to work. We have no clue. We have no clue. You might be handed a provisional ballot, which means your vote ain't getting counted, by the way. Your vote ain't getting counted if you're handed a provisional ballot. But yeah, there might be this paper requirement. We don't know how it's going to work. We don't know. You might need to write in the candidate's name. You might need to just need to go outside and light the ballot on fire and then do a cartwheel and then we'll count it. We don't know. Yeah, we have no idea. Who has any confidence in this? Who has any confidence in this process? We're trying this new machine. We don't know. Would you imagine you were buying a product? Imagine you were, let's say car. Let's just say car. And you go to the car dealership and they're like, yes, this is a totally new car. We don't know if it's going to spontaneously explode when you start it. We don't know if the airbags will work. We don't even know if the radio is a guarantee, but it is new. It is cutting edge. That car kind of seems a little scary. Can I have a substitute? Nope, this is the car we sell. This is the only car you sell? Yeah, this is the car we sell. You know what? We have a backup. You can use this bicycle, and the tire may or may not fall off. It may or may not. The brakes may or may not work. In fact, it might not even be a bicycle. It might just be a booster seat. We're not sure, but you can try that. How much confidence would you have in this car dealership besides none? That's the election integrity that California is giving you. That analogy I just made with buying a car, that is literally no embellishment, the election security we have in Los Angeles and California as a whole. Unbelievable. We don't know. But yeah, we have no idea. It needs to meet these requirements by February 22nd. Will it? We have no idea. We have no clue. And then if it doesn't, what are we going to do? There might be a paper option. Yeah, maybe, sort of. Democracy, baby. This is, our elections are very fair and free. We're crushing it. I mean, Iowa, California, you just go down the list. You go down the list. Beautiful. So there's a little bit of an election integrity coverage for you. But I'm sure Russia putting out memes is the big thing. That's the only thing we need to worry about. Russia putting out memes, and then a spam agency putting out memes, and every now and again throughout the history of this country, sometimes somebody voted and they weren't actually the person they said they were. That's happened, like a small handful of times, maybe. Those are the big things. We can just knock out those two things. We're fine. The security of our process, we're totally fine. The transparency that the establishment gives us, totally fine. Superdelegates, no big deal. The Electoral College, no big deal. Gerrymandering, not a problem. Voter suppression, whatever. But, that's all fine. It's just, Russia putting out memes and, voter fraud over on the right. Those are the big things. Those are the big things. Let's keep our priorities straight, America. We got this.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your